just to show you that there are 6 destinations under that cluster. We are one of them, we are destination 5, but that's all internal kitchen. And then the next and most important slide, thank you, is basically to show you that the work program 23-24, which has recently been adopted and published on the 6th of December, for space will be implemented for the goals. When it comes to goals, there is also a part implemented through the European Space Agency, but the part implemented through EU goals, there will be 3 goals. One will be published by HADIA. It's the 2023 Space 01. It will already open later this month on the 22nd of December, with a deadline on the 28th of March 2023. And then more or less the same mechanism will apply 1 year later. So the 2024 call published by HADIA will open 21st of November 2023 and will have a deadline 20 Feb 2024. But we also have a call published through USPA for 2023, which will open normally in October 2023 and then have a deadline in Feb 2024. Although I must say that this USPA call, we are still working on trying to anticipate it a bit so that it would be published before summer 2023. But for the moment, you have here the official dates. So 3 goals for this 2-year work program. This concludes my short introduction. I pass the floor back to you, Christos.
Thank you very much, Isabel. And in fact, this concludes the, let's say, the introductory session for this work program 2023 for Destination 5. And in fact, we are ready now to go deeper into the different topics. I will now pass the floor to my colleague Daniel Nolke from the Innovation Startups and Economics Unit, again in DigiDefis, who will speak to us about the first block, which is in fact foster competitiveness of space systems. And this entails 3 topics: end-to-end Earth observation systems and services, and then 2 topics on future space ecosystems. Daniel, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Christos. Do you share the slides? I can see them.
I will redo this. Maybe there was some sort of technical issue. Sorry for this. Should be up and running.
Thank you, Christos, again for the introduction. Hello, everyone. I have the pleasure to introduce this part of the current call, so the part on foster competitiveness of space systems. So as mentioned by Christos already in the introduction, so we have 3 topics in 2023 call in this area. One is on Earth observation and 2 topics are related to the future space ecosystem line. In this section, we have a total budget of 28 million foreseen for those 3 topics. Next slide, please. The first one is on Earth observation, is about end-to-end observation systems and associated services. This topic should strengthen the competitiveness of the EO domain by enhancing the flexibility and reducing costs on the other side, while maintaining or even increasing the overall system performance in this field. So the projects are expected to contribute to the outcomes, especially that you see here, to maintain the worldwide leadership on EO systems for Europe, and to contribute towards a kind of flexible and more competitive end-to-end system demonstration by the end of Horizon Europe. Here in this case, we think about putting the achievements done on the last year over the last years together onto a kind of ground demonstration of an end-to-end approach. Of course, every project is also expected to contribute to the short and medium-term disruptive developments and maturation, especially of the key technology, and so to say, to contribute to the European non-dependence in this area. We have three areas in this topic in mind regarding the R&I activities. So one is based on EO technology, built on a network of small satellites, especially also focusing on the overall performance of the system. Here, in terms of, just to give you an example, high revisit times, high reconfigurability, but also high spatial resolutions, for example. So with this approach, we would like to also seize the innovation potential in terms of low cost and but also in kind of disruptive and sustainable approaches. The second part should focus on satellite data management and processing, also here with the objective in mind to continue to reduce the costs, but also to increase the end-to-end performance of the systems. Especially, it's not only satellite data management and processing, but also here it should be focused on infrastructures and networks for ground processing and virtual network functions. The third and last part of R&I is here focusing on the fosterization of digitalization in this field of Earth observation, and especially here to further strengthen the use of AI in industrial processes, also including software validation and verification, to further reduce costs, but also increase flexibility and overall performance. The indicative budget is 10 million. We expect 4 topics for projects for this topic. Type of action is innovation action with a financial setup of lump sums, and the expected TRL will be 5 to 6. The proposal should address only one of the 3 areas above, which should be clearly identified. The cooperation between different actors, industry, SMEs, research institutes, is expected to be promoted. And in general, the proposals under this topic should explore synergies and be complementary to already funded actions. Next slide, please. The next topic in the future space ecosystem line is this one that you see here. It combines the former future space ecosystem and enabling technologies area that is mentioned in the so-called strategic research innovation agenda for space R&I. This topic shall enable and foster the area of industrialization and new services in space by new intelligent solutions, and also cultivating a kind of app store and open architecture principle. We expect here that the projects will contribute to the future space ecosystem, which is also characterized by a kind of sustainable, highly automated, flexible, but also economically viable space infrastructure in the future that we build here on technologies that and concepts for a circular economy in space, such as the plug-and-play spacecraft functionality and modularity approach. So, as I mentioned already, here, one of the foci of this topic is on-orbit services, so all kinds of services in the orbit. That means talking about maintenance, repair, upgrade, life extension, debris removal. All these areas are addressed in this topic, and we expect that the projects in this area should contribute to mature the necessary technologies in this field. We have two sub-areas here that are mentioned. So one is specifically on electric propulsion systems. Electric propulsion systems are key for the future in-space services. So in particular, we expect on this area to work on generic building blocks for electric propulsion systems that are relevant for the industrialization in this area. The second part is focusing on different technologies and concepts, but also with a clear pathway to application and business in mind. So here really focusing on the enabling new applications and services. And just to give you a few examples that you can see, so we talk about innovative approaches for operations, for example, of the generation of new services, as mentioned before, like life extension services, for example, but also thinking about more in the future, thinking about assembly services via specific platforms in the orbit, for example. Also here in focus is, for example, serial production or manufacturing concepts, but also hardware and software approaches to shorten the overall development, test and integration time, for example. We have an indicative budget of 50 million. We consider to fund up to 8 projects, and the type of action is research innovation action. Financial setup will be lump sum, and we have here a TRL that is expected by the end of the projects for the first part, electric propulsion system 4 to 6, and for the generic technologies and concepts, we expect a TRL from 3 to 5 in the end. The proposal should address only one of the areas above mentioned. We expect also here that the cooperation between different actors is promoted, and the proposal should explore relevant and promising solutions that were already derived in Horizon 2020 activities, especially in projects result from the strategic research clusters, space robotics technologies, and electric propulsion. Next slide, please. So this is the last topic of this section for competitiveness. It's a CSA, Coordination Support Action, on future space ecosystem, management and coordination activity. Here, the project is expected to come up with a roadmap focusing on in-space services, really to work on a target-oriented approach, considering enabling technologies, synergies between cluster 4 destinations, and of course, taking into account current market and trends around the globe in this area to really build up a strategic and a forward-looking roadmap in the end. And second, what is important and what is expected from the project is that it works towards coherent principles, guidelines, standards in the field of on-orbit servicing, which supports then in the end European actors to implement their business successfully in this domain. We have 5 main tasks that should be covered by this project or by proposals. So first of all, what I said, it's to derive a target-oriented roadmap which clearly identifies pathways to innovative, promising applications and services, which take into account identify the enabling technologies that are needed. And for those technologies, there should be really clearly defined pathways for their quick maturation and qualification in space. The third one would be that the CSA will give support to decisions regarding programmatic and strategic questions in this field that will be taken by the Commission. The fourth task will be that the project should contribute to international dialogue and on recommendations for guidelines and standards in the field of in-space services. And this especially should be based on the work done already in the Horizon 2020 project per Aspera on the so-called European Operations Framework. And the last one, of course, this is expected that the CSA will contribute to the targeted dissemination and outreach activities for the future space ecosystem activities overall. Indicative budget is 2 million euro. It is only one project that will be funded with the type of action, as I said, is a CSA. The financial lump sum setup will be lump sum, excuse me. Also here, and especially here, we expect an active participation of industrial actors, including SMEs, in the consortium. So with that, I would like to close this session. Thank you. Back to you, Christos.
Many thanks, Daniel, for this very nice overview of the competitiveness part, so Earth observation and future space ecosystems. In fact, we are perfectly on time, and now we can have the, excuse me for this, the opportunity to receive your questions. So you may join Slido, enter the event code InfoDay, and submit your questions by entering your name. Of course, it's good also if the topic addressed is clearly identified, so that Daniel can pick up immediately the question. So let's give a couple of minutes for any question that can pop up on Slido. We have one question. So, is there any restriction for participation of non-EU countries that apply? Daniel?
Okay, yeah, I see the question. Well, it is defined, of course, in the table that usually are given in the above each of the topics. But in this case, I mean, we have no specific criteria in these topics in the field of competitiveness that limit the participation to EU countries only. So in this case, it's the eligibility criteria as given in the general annex is valid here for these fields of topics.
Thank you, Daniel. Next question, which of the topics 11, 12, and 13 is best suited for approaches towards building steps towards a square? So it's what we heard before by Guillaume.
True. I mean, clearly, I would say, I mean, all of the three are not, let's say, configured with a purpose really of building Iris Square. This is clear. Nevertheless, I mean, especially when it comes to game-changing and innovative technologies and relevant building blocks, personally speaking, I would prefer, let's say, the second one, namely the 12th one.
Thank you, Daniel. Quite clear. Then there is another question that is possibly linked to the first one that was answered already. Can an EU-based organization controlled by a company that is not based in EU participate to the calls in general of Destination 5?
Well, I think this has to be answered by later. I think we have also a presentation on this, especially because this is very generic, this question, not really specific to section to this section. So foster competitiveness. This should not be answered by me only, probably. But as I said before, for the first question that we had here, the three topics that were mentioned are let's say, not limited only to EU member states participation or affiliation of EU member states, but limited, let's say, by the general annex that is given as stated in in the tables of each of the topics. So I think you can address, or we will address this question later as well.
Perhaps I can quickly address it now.
Okay.
So in fact, in principle, when nothing specific is written in the work program and then in the course, Horizon Europe is open. So basic option is normally it's open. But of course, in space, given certain security or strategic interests, there are some topics which are restricted. When they are, it is clearly mentioned in the work program and clearly mentioned in the course as well. As Daniel said, the 3 topics that he just presented are open. There are no restrictions are mentioned. But some other topics which will be presented later this morning are restricted, and if they are, they will be mentioned by the presenter.
Thank you, Isabel.
Excellent. Thank you, Isabel and Daniel. And indeed, in fact, I will be presenting later, let's say, the conditions under which an entity that is controlled may participate to the calls only for the topics that are indeed restricted, as Isabel rightly said. Right. Thank you for this. Do we have any more questions? Maybe we can wait a couple of minutes more. We have a little bit more time. Okay, does not seem to be the case. So we can take a very small break and meet in at 9:50. We heard a lot about future space ecosystems, on-orbit operations, on-orbit services, and then at 9:50 we will be moving towards access to space in the next area to be covered. So see you in a few minutes at 9:50 for the next session on access to space.
Thank you, Christos, for your information. We will keep the streaming on for our audience, and you can start again at 9:50. I will put the banner, and I will stop it at 9:50.
So welcome back to this session. And in fact, we will now be sharing, I will now pass the floor to my colleague Romain Lézier, who will guide us through the topics on access to space.
Thank you, Christos, and good morning, everyone. My name is Romain Lézier. I'm working for DEFI B2 units, and I'm particularly in charge of access to space topics. So, in order to reinforce EU capacity to access to space, 3 topics are planned in 2023 in the domain. So the first one is dedicated to strategic launcher. The second in support to new space transportation solution, and the third dedicated to ground segment in support to the overall ecosystem. 53 million euros are dedicated to these topics in 2023. In order to answer some potential question, there is some participation restriction associated to the 3 topics. So the participation is limited to entities established in EU member states, Iceland, Norway, and also UK, but under certain conditions. So for UK, to confirm UK participation, UK will first need to be associated to Horizon Europe and published equivalent space calls open to EU entities. And also both conditions will have to be fulfilled on the date of the opening of this topic for submission. So it's a strong condition. Next slide, please. So the first call regards low-cost, high-trust propulsion for European strategic launcher. It should contribute to reduce launch costs by 50% by 2030 with respect to Ariane 6 Vega and Vega C for the benefits of EU space program. It should also contribute to enhance Europe's open strategic autonomy. So to decrease the launch cost, it is necessary to work on low-cost, high-performance, and green propulsion technologies for high-thrust engine. These activities should address maturation of enabling technology up to integrated ground tests at subsystem level by 2025, and later integrates those technology in an engine in order to test it on ground by 2026 through an engine firing test. The mature technology building blocks, tools, and processes should be applicable to strategic launchers. This means launcher able to launch EU space program components. So those components at the time of the writing of this topic was Copernicus and Galileo. And the objective is to enable operational capacities by 2030. The activity should include as many as technology possible. However, cost reduction should be demonstrated. All the activity should be complementary and coherent with ESA and ongoing and future activities. This means that it includes decisions taken during the last conference at ministerial level. So 20 million euro are planned for these topics, and only one project is expected to be funded. Next slide, please. The second call is called, the second topic is called New Space Transportation Solution and Services, and it intends to contribute to the EU Green Deal objective. It is also expected to contribute to expand commercial space transportation offer and service with new space transportation solution, with the objective to contribute to double the market to European industry by 2030. The project should focus on maturation of enabling new technologies and subsystems. It could go up to subsystem and system level technology demonstration in two main areas. So first, the recovery and reuse of space transportation vehicle elements in three technology domains are identified. So re-entry of launcher elements through the entire atmospheric flight domain, launcher fairing, and micro launcher first stage and booster stage. And the second area is space transportation technology in support to in-orbit servicing system. And here technology allowing the in-orbit reuse of a green and sustainable cryogenic element for multiple operation and mission in orbit. And again, all these activities should be complementary and coherent with ESA. So 23 million euro are identified in this topic, and we intend to fund up to 4 projects. Next slide, please. This last topic is called Modern, Flexible and Efficient European Test Production and Launch Facilities. It should contribute to reduce launch costs by 50% by 2030 with respect to Ariane 6 and Vega C to the benefits of EU space program. It should also contribute to enhance Europe open strategic autonomy and to expand commercial space transportation offer and services. In order to achieve this objective, the activity should deal with production, test, or launch facilities. So projects should focus on cost reduction, improving flexibility and interoperability of European launch system to improve the access to space ground facilities in Europe. So keywords are really flexibility, interoperability, openness, standardization, and cost reduction. And it is not written, but indeed, those activities are also expected to be coherent with ESA activities. 10 million euros are dedicated to this topic, and we expect to fund 3 projects. This ends my presentation. Thank you.
Many thanks, Romain, for this nice presentation of the 3 topics on access to space, which brings us to the possibility of answering your questions. So you may join Slido, enter the event code, info day, and submit your questions with your name, indicating which of the topics, of the 3 topics, it is applicable, for which it is applicable. So let's give a couple of minutes to collect any questions you may have for Romain, and they will pop up on the screen, and we will try to answer them. let's wait perhaps another minute or two for any possible questions. Does not seem to be the case. Of course, you may submit your questions on the funding and tenders portal, and clearly we will you will receive an answer based on the exchanges in the portal. In case it doesn't, any question does not pop up right now. Therefore, let us then pause and resume at. Since there are no questions, we can resume at 10:20 with the next block of topics, which is on quantum, so innovative space capabilities, quantum. So we will start again at 10:20.
Thank you, Christos. Again, the same story will repeat later on. I will stop the slide with the overview of the day at 10:20, as we did before.
Welcome back, everybody. So now I will pass the floor to Frédéric Doms, who will present the topics on quantum, so innovative space capabilities.
Good morning, dear colleagues. If we could have the first slide on quantum technologies.
Excuse me for this. Should
That's the one. Yes.
work. Okay, the floor is yours, Frédéric, and sorry for the glitch.
Good morning, everyone. So for work program 23, we're going to have two quantum-related calls. The first one is about quantum communication technologies for space system, and the second one on quantum space gravimetry. We're going to have a phase A study. So next slide, please. So for the first call, quantum technologies for space system, what are we aiming at? We are aiming at supporting the EU space policy, and in particular the EU initiative to establish the Union Secure Connectivity Program. Quantum is indeed embedded in the associated framework, and we are expected quantum key distribution to be aggregated on board the satellites of secure connectivity. We also aim at ensuring our sovereignty and non-dependence for the development of quantum key distribution techno. Obviously, if we want to secure EU infrastructure, we want to have an EU non-dependent industrial ecosystem that is able to provide us with quantum key distribution techno. We're also trying to develop the critical components that are necessary to build QKD space systems. The definition of what we call the critical components is included in the call. So basically, any component that handles quantum information on board the payload or on ground is considered a critical component. There's also a part of the work that is associated to the development and fostering of QKD standards. Indicative budget for this is 5 million euros. We're expected to fund 2 projects and aiming for a TRL from 5 to 6. Voila. So if we could go to the next slide, please. So the next one, still quantum technology, but in another domain related to Earth observation. We are aiming at deploying quantum gravimetry Pathfinder mission before the end of this decade. And in order to do that, we are going to fund a phase A study. So phase A in the typical space definition sense. Why are we doing that? Well, of course, we are aiming at developing the EU space policy and the Green Deal, because quantum space gravimetry is going to be useful for Earth observation. We are expecting to receive in the proposals mission system and operation concepts for quantum space gravimetry Pathfinder mission. And there again, we want to get the list of critical components for the quantum space gravimetry mission. So it's a typical phase A study, plus we want to have a good idea at the end of the study of what the critical components are for a quantum space gravimetry mission. Indicative budget is 3 million euro. we're expecting to fund 2 phase A studies, and the TRL is what it is for a phase A study, so TRL 3. Voilà. I think this is my last slide. I'll take questions now.
Thank you very much, Frederic. Indeed, now is the moment for our questions through Slido. So you may go to slido.com or scan the code, enter the event code, and then submit your questions with your name and indicating which of the 2 topics, in this case, you're addressing. So let's give a few minutes for collecting any questions you may have. We still have a little bit of time to answer those. Let's wait perhaps 1 more minute for any incoming questions through Slido. Does not seem to be the case. Thank you, Frederic, for a very clear presentation of the 2 topics on quantum. Again, to remind everybody, of course, questions can also be submitted offline after this event, and you will receive an answer. And also, what's the page for the FAQ section on the Funding and Tenders portal, where we will be sharing frequently asked questions that may be arriving in the next weeks or months. Thank you very much. Then we can, since there are no questions, we can pause and resume at 10:40 with a session on Copernicus that will be moderated by my colleague Massimo Ciscato. So see you again at 10:40. Thank you.
Okay, good morning and welcome back. In the next block, we are going to see the topics on the evolution of Copernicus services. My name is Massimo Ciscato. I'm the head of sector space services in space research in HADEA. And it is my pleasure now to introduce Michel Rixen, who is program officer at the Directorate General of the European Commission, Directorate General Defense Industry Space, Unit C3, Earth Observation, which is the unit who manages the Copernicus program, which is the Earth Observation program of the European Union. Michel, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Massimo, and good morning, everyone. I hope you can all hear me well. Thank you very much for the introduction as well, Massimo. So yes, under this call, we have 4 different topics which are aimed at ensuring that we have an enhanced continuity of the service and that we bring in the latest science and technology developments into the Copernicus services. As you might know, under Copernicus, we have 6 different services, and all along the framework program, we have dealt with a number of calls throughout this period to ensure that we have a gradual transition of science and technology into the services, which are operation, as you know. So we have 4 different topics for this time in 2023. The first one dealing with the atmosphere, climate change, and including also a CO2 component. Could you just go back to the previous slide, if that's possible? Thank you. So the first topic is dealing and supporting the Copernicus Atmospheric Monitoring Service and the Copernicus Climate Change Service. The CO2 component itself is managed by CAMS, so the Atmospheric Monitoring Service, but it's also part of this first topic. On the second topic, we're dealing with emergency management, so in support of CAMS, the Copernicus Emergency Management Service. The third component is focusing quite strongly on the in-situ component as a complement to the Earth observations component. We know that this is fundamental to support a number of activities under the Copernicus services. And the last topic here dealing with the Copernicus Marine Environmental Monitoring Service, and we'll see that this one will focus quite strongly on the coastal component. I should note also that there is a guidance document that has been developed to support and provide more details on these various topics, and that will be published also along the core document on the funding and tender platform. Next slide, please. Okay, so for the first topic, in support of CAMS and C3S, and also including the CO2 MVS, the monitoring and verification support capacity, we have 3 main expected outcomes. The first one meant to enhance the quality and efficiency of both services, CAMS and C3S, especially to respond to evolving policy. That there are quite some notorious policy evolutions over the last years, also the new context, the geopolitical context, also in terms of user requirements and science and technology developments. The second focus is on the continuation and setup of the new Copernicus service elements for specifically for the CO2 monitoring and verification support capacity. As I mentioned, this is managed under CAMS, but we have a specific expected outcome here. And last but not least, also the development of efficient and reliable product chains, new algorithms for data fusion, big data analytics, including deep learning, artificial intelligence, and so forth. The preparation for new and upcoming Sentinels, and also contributing missions, which are also important. As you know, Copernicus has its own satellites, but also builds on strong partnerships with other providers of Earth observations. In terms of scope, we expect the proposals to deal with one and a single one of those foci that are listed here. With regards to the CAMS focus, the focus here is on the improvement of aerosol representation in global and regional systems in terms of modeling and data simulation in particular. but also improvements in downstream products like solar products as part of the CAMS portfolio. The second scope is in support of the C3S, and here we invite proposers to focus on innovative methodologies to characterize compounds and cascading extreme events, including determining the potential frequency, intensity, and impacts of these events in the context of changing climate. There is also a bit of an element regarding attribution. And the last foci, also in a potentially separate proposal on the CO2 MVS to improve the requirements, in particular accuracy and mass conservation for the numerical schemes in the CO2 MVS system, which is meant to derive the fluxes and emissions of CO2. And so the mass conservation accuracy is really fundamental here. Indicative budget here is 8.6 million. But because of the separate topics expected in these proposals, the funding indications for each one of the proposals between 2 and 3 million. The type of action is research and innovation, and expected TRL is 5 to 6. So that means feasibility of integration into existing core services. Next slide. So the second topic focuses on Copernicus for emergency management. In terms of expected outcomes here, there is a guidance that we expect proposals to deal at least with 3 of the elements outlined on this slide. The first one being the automated characterization of building height using the integration of different sensors, EU and non-EO and non-EO open data sources in particular. The second one on the integration of new satellite data for early warning and active global fire detection and monitoring. And we know that particularly with the upcoming Sentinels, this provides new opportunities. Another expected outcome is on the integration of high and very high resolution spatial data and sensors for the mapping of fuel structure and condition at the pan-European level. Another expected outcome is on the improvement of hydrological processes representation at continental or global scale, and that's obviously a core business of CAMS in terms of flood, drought, and warning monitoring. Another one is on addressing limitations of SAR data to monitor floods, especially in those challenging environments like urban areas or where you have dense vegetation or adverse meteorological conditions. Another one is on the seamless subseasonal to seasonal predictions of extreme hydrometeor events and multi-sectoral impacts. Another one is on the optimization of integration of different data sources and indices characterizing extreme meteorological events. And the last one on the integration of unmanned aerial vehicles along the value chain within CAMS. The scope is on developing innovative methods and technologies in support of CAMS, either addressing enhanced elements of our existing components, or to add new elements of existing components, or add new service elements complementing the core service here of CAMS. I should note also here that there is a special eligibility condition here. The GRC may participate as a member of the consortium, and there are further details which I will not spend time here on the specific scope of activities that are eligible for the GRC here. The indicative budget for this topic is 3 million, so the expectation is to fund 1 project. Type of action is research and innovation, and TRL level is 6, so proof of concept or prototype demonstration. Next slide. So the third topic here is on the in-situ component to complement the Earth observations component, space component here. Expected outcome here is that proposals address 2 or more of the following. The first one being optimal use of early observations, because they were dealing with old methods, different error analysis or quality control and bias adjustment. and purpose here is to reconcile those methods with more modern observations method. The second one being the better use of Copernicus observations collected during research and innovations projects. The third one being the enhancement of availability and quality of in situ data, critical for the current Copernicus services. And there are many of such examples, of course. And the last expected outcome is on considerations of cross-cutting activities pertaining to research and innovations. And of course, the in situ component here. The scope is on the sustainable reuse of in situ data collected, for example, during field campaigns that are in support of validation information of the services, Copernicus services. Second scope is on innovative observation strategies in data sparse areas. And there is one specific interest, also an explicit reference in the call text about acoustic observations to characterize marine ecosystems, for example, such as micronecton. Of course, this is not exclusive, can be other ones. Another scope is on the synergistic use of complementary type of surface observations. And an example here is on PCO2 and pH observations from research vessels or ship of opportunity and Argo floats to improve the estimation of air sea fluxes of CO2. Of course, this is also of high relevance for the CO2 MVS. And the last scope here is on the use of machine learning technologies for automated, for example, quality control of historic and real-time meteorological and hydrological in situ observations. Indicative budget here is 2 million, and we expect to fund up to one project. Type of action is research and innovation, and TRL 5 to 6. Next slide. So the last topic under this element of Copernicus evolution topics is the dealing with the Copernicus Marine Environmental Monitoring Service. The focus here is quite heavily oriented towards the coastal zone. We expected outcomes on supporting policies, the mission Healthy Ocean, also the UN Decade of Ocean Science. Second expected outcome here is on new innovative products, tackling the big data volume that the service has to deal with. And we know this is sometimes a challenge in terms of data dissemination and access. And the third outcome is on new algorithms using new Earth observation missions, whether that's new Sentinels, but also contributing missions, to enhance the continuity of the service in the coastal areas. In terms of scope, as I mentioned, the coastal zone is really the focus here to support policy implementations, conservation, resilience to climate change, and sustainable blue economy. And in terms of activities, it's mainly centered around the advancement and seamless monitoring and forecasting on regional to coastal scale, especially on issues such as high spatiotemporal resolution and dynamics to constrain coastal applications. And you see here all the kind of nesting approach from the global and regional elements of the service into the coastal and local domain. The project is also expected to contribute to Destiny and the digital twin ocean and new technologies, everything going from cloud, HPC, AI, deep learning, machine learning, ensemble modeling, model coupling, and nesting is welcome. Three main elements here. One is on the development of pan-European satellite coastal observations retrievals. We know that this can be quite challenging, aiming at high resolution and also improving the access and processing of corresponding in situ data, which can be used in this context. The development of improved inputs of freshwater inflows, including biogeochemistry and methods to couple hydrological models with CMEMS models in the coastal domain. And last but not least, also developing coupling techniques between CMEMS models and downstream coastal models, including impact assessment on key coastal applications. Indicative budget here is 5 million. Expectation is to fund up to one project. type of action is research and innovation, and TRL is 5 to 6, with a focus on strengthening system elements for operational development in the future, integration into CMMs. I think this was the last slide, and back to you, Massimo, for any questions that you may have.
Yes. Thank you, Michel, for this detailed overview of the topics related to the evolution of Copernicus services. As usual, now we have a Slido session. You can scan the QR code that you see on screen, or you can just enter the event code InfoDay, and you can ask your question. Please specify for which topic, to which topic the question relates to, and if you have you have some time, we will wait now a few minutes to give you the time indeed to formulate your questions. Okay, there was one right away. So for space 134, which is on marine environment, given the pan-European aspect in the objectives, is there a minimum number of member states that the pilots should be deployed to in a proposal? Michel?
As far as I remember, the call is not specific on about requesting a minimum number of member states, but I think it's always good to highlight the possible upscaling of those pilots to ensure that this can be replicated to some extent to other areas of the pan-European level, basically. Yeah, that's probably all I can say about this.
Okay, thank you, Michel. Next question is about the funding. Somebody notices that the funding is quite low and only one project will be funded, and they want to know why.
Well, we always wish the funding was more substantial for these, but one element here as part of the answer is that those calls, because they are meant to support the direct enhancement of the service or the evolution of the service, they are quite focused in the outcome, and so being quite targeted in what we expect from those proposals. I think this is what the budget was assigned for these calls and topics. But maybe my colleagues from ADEA can provide further insights.
Okay, thank you. No, I think your answer was exhaustive. Now let's wait a few more minutes. I don't see any other questions coming up, but we have time, so let's wait a bit. Okay, we have another question concerning Space 131. Is it possible for project to develop solutions across more than one of the scopes, or do you want projects to focus on only one? So there's a question about the scope, which about the three indeed areas that were indicated. Michel?
Yeah, yes. Thank you for asking that question. Indeed, this topic is a bit particular because it has kind of three subtopics, one specific on CAMS, one specific on C3S, and one specific on the CO2, sorry, and one specific on the CO2 MVS component. Of course, that doesn't prevent you from, so of course, the scope has to be clearly identified in your proposal. Nothing prevents you from making linkages to the other subtopics. Yet, I would advise you to be quite specific in the focus of your proposal. But relevance to the other proposal, to the other subtopics, of course, can be highlighted, and the benefit to those different elements can be highlighted.
Very good, thank you. So we see more questions coming in. Next one is about the topic 32, so the emergency management topic. Which type of UAVs are concerned? Are the apps or HAFs, so the included integration of UAV along the full value added chain?
Yeah, again, the call is not prescribing, what type of UAVs are concerned. So HAPs are probably welcome. I mean, nothing is, saying the opposite in the call. So, it could be considered. And again, here the idea is to complement in situ measurements on top of the Earth observations component.
Thank you. And since I see another question on UAVs coming up, I will take first that one and then the next one. So for UAVs in topic 32, so the emergency management, are the communication systems for UAVs in scope, or maybe relatively in scope?
I would say it shouldn't be probably the main focus of that topic, but it could be part of a task within the work package, I would say. But it's definitely not the shouldn't probably be the main foci of your proposal, because unless this is really super critical for the service. But I think the scope of a proposal should probably be a bit broader than just a communication system for the UAV. But of course, that's in scope if you demonstrate that this has some relevance for the service and makes ultimately some impact to enhance the service and make it state of the art.
Okay, thank you, Michel. Now, next question is for the topic on marine environment. So, do you expect integration with existing systems and/or sensors?
I guess this refers to some of the in situ sensors, although the question is maybe not specific on that. But yes, I mean this could be part of the the work proposed in the proposal. Integration can add value and enhance the service. So yes, I wouldn't see any problem including that kind of work as well in the proposal.
Okay, thank you for this. We still have some time, so we'll wait a few minutes to see if somebody has other questions. Again, as Christos was saying before, if you come up later with questions, we will answer them, and we'll make the answer, of course, public so that everybody has the same information. And in this context, I will recommend also to use the research inquiry services and check regularly the participant portal for topic updates and FAQs and all the important information about the topics you are planning to submit proposals to. Okay. Okay, let's wait still a few minutes. There doesn't seem to be more questions coming up, but feel free to ask more questions. After this, there will be a bit longer break until 11:25, when we will resume with the topic on scientific exploration of space data. Okay, so there seem to be no more questions, so I would stop the session here. Thank you, Michel, for all this precious information, and we will resume at 11:25 with Christos. My colleague Christos will moderate that session, and then we continue until lunchtime. Thank you.
Welcome back, everybody. And now we go to the next block, which is targeted and strategic action supporting the EU space sector. This block has two topics under it that are a little bit different. The one is on scientific exploitation of space data. The other block on critical space technologies for European non-dependence and competitiveness. So I will now welcome my colleagues Mats Ljungqvist and Fabio Vitobello from DigiDefis. And Mats, the floor is yours for the scientific exploitation of space data.
Christos, for this introduction. I hope you hear me. If not, let me know. Can have the next slide. Yes, indeed. So as you heard, these are two topics in this little block. They don't have much in common. So this first one is about the scientific exploitation of space data. Well, the first message here is that for the real science, clearly in Horizon Europe, like in Horizon 2020, we have a significant part of the budget of the framework program devoted to science, and that is found in Pillar 1, the European Research Council, the Marie Curie mobility grants, and infrastructure, research infrastructures. So most of the science for space, astronomy, astrophysics, and also some technology development actually, is funded under the science pillar in Horizon Europe. So there is much more money there than in this part. We have over the years funded space exploitation, scientific exploitation of space data, and also scientific instrumentation development and space exploration technologies. So scientifically relevant, so topics relevant for science, space science. This year, in 2023, we have the scientific exploitation of space data, which is more on the, as you can hear from the name, it's more on the actually doing the science on the available data that comes out of the space missions that is being funded over the world, but primarily for us, interest in European missions through ESA and the member states. Examples are Rosetta, Space, Solar Orbiter, and so on and so forth, where significant amounts of data, valuable data, expensive data, or expensive to collect data exist in archives across Europe and at ESA archives. Much science has been done on this data, but much science remains to be done on this data, which is also exploited by teams all over the world, including the United States. So we want also the Europeans to benefit to a maximum of this data for scientific investigations, and therefore we have this topic here, which is dedicated to exploitation of all acquired and available data provided by space missions in their operative, post-operative, or data exploitation phase, in complementarity with other activities at ESA level, national level, and so on. Focus is on European missions, but of course, this is an area of intense international cooperation, and many missions are actually cooperation between between ESA and NASA, for example, and other actors. So it's not excluded to exclusively for European data, but the focus is there. Also, Copernicus, we just heard about Copernicus services. So Copernicus data also are available, and here we can also, of course, expect a lot of more science, Earth system science, and so on to be done on Copernicus data. On Galileo signals can also be used for scientific purposes, for ionospheric investigations, and so on. So, as you can understand, the scope is very broad. It means also we get a lot of interesting proposals covering a wide variety of fields. So the competition is quite intense, I would say. We have a budget this year of 10.7 million, with a typical project size of a bit more than 1 million euro per project. Low TRL activities, of course, research and innovation actions. Really, what we expect from this is to improve science, to come up with projects that add scientific value through this scientific exploitation, analysis of data, which would lead to publications, more publications in this field, more collaboration between scientific teams within Europe, but also outside Europe. This is a topic which lends itself very well to international cooperation, because international cooperation is already there. So we encourage that, of course, with countries that are active in this area of space exploration and space science. So I think that will conclude this explanation of this topic, which for those of you who have been involved in the past is quite similar to what was done, I think, in the last year of Horizon 2020. In 2022, we had a topic on the more technology development aspects of science, so exploration technologies and instrumentation, scientific instrumentation in development. But this time again, so exploitation of space data in the 2023 call. That's all for me, so I hand over to Fabio for explanation of the critical technologies topic. Or back to Christos, I don't know.
Thank you, Mats. Fabio, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Christos, and good morning to everybody. My name is Fabio Vitubello from the GDFIS Directorate for Space and Defense. So this topic that I'm going to talk about is about space technologies for European non-dependence and competitiveness. As we heard this morning, the level of attention and urgency in terms of increasing effort in the area of technology dependencies have been raised in the last years, months. And the main focus is the safeguard of the Union's strategic assets, interests, autonomy, and security. In this respect, actually, we have since several years a topic dedicated for boosting, developing critical technologies for space applications that are based, let's say, on EU ecosystem of industry. So the expected outcomes of this topic is, as I said, reduce dependencies of critical space technologies from outside EU. And the idea is to build the building blocks that eventually will be deployed and used in EU space missions. The other aspect is to indeed develop capability, European capacity to operate independently in space. Therefore, also the other important aspect is to not forget the competitiveness of our components. One side is the non-dependence, another side is ensuring that our components, equipment, in general, critical space technologies are competitive at European level as well as worldwide level. In fact, actually, we want to stimulate the creation of competitive industries, SMEs, the industrial ecosystem for, let's say, competing at worldwide level and let's say also exporting, let's say, technology outside Europe that offer the the fact that are not let's say dependent from non-EU export restrictions that in many cases are extraterritorial. And last but not least, we want to also stimulate the creation of projects, a consortium that will eventually exploit synergies between space and non-space related fields. Now, allow me to make a step forward and go into the actual, technology high-level expectations. So first of all, the budget. The budget is around 20 million euros for the overall topic. And for each of the project, the expected EU contribution and the size of the project funded by you around 2 to 3 millions. So you will see we have already pre-identified the technologies and the development that TRL is between 4 and 8, depending on the technology that we're talking about. If we go now to the next slide, you will see the expected technology developments that we have, identified. First of all, before we go there, allow me to clarify that this particular topic has a restricted eligibility. Therefore, participation is only limited to legal entities that are established in member states, EU member states, plus Iceland and Norway. The technologies that are expected to be developed in 2023 are the following: high-speed DAC ADC converters, carbon fibers and pre-impregnated material sources for space applications, then space qualified detectors targeting the infrared range, then the mid-power electric propulsion thruster technologies. And here we have two specific lines. One is to, let's say, complement and support the current available EU technologies already, let's say, developed so far in the area of mid-power, and we are going to support the qualification activities of electrical propulsion thrusters up to 5 kilowatts, therefore middle range. And the second line is boosting or fostering the creation of electrical thruster based on novel technologies, in particular technologies that will rely on non-dependent propellants. Therefore, for example, xenon or krypton. The other technology is replacement solution for metallic lead. Therefore, as you know, the REACH regulation has identified lead as a potential, material that will potentially be banned soon. There is a sunset date, and this is affecting the space ecosystem, especially for what concerns soldering, assemblies, coatings. Therefore, we want to stimulate and support the space ecosystem toward a transition for, let's say, soldering pastes that are lead-free. The last technology line is about solar cells, therefore space targeted multi-junction solar cells. And then please, keep in mind that these are high-level titles. Of course, there are, let's say, an additional layer of technical information to understand exactly what we expect and basic, let's say, requirements. And therefore, please consider the technical guidance document that will be provided and will be available in the portal where you have the information about this topic. Please download it and read. You will find additional information for each of the 7 technology lines. If we go to the next slide, I would like to also mention upon an important aspect and let's say specificity of this topic. So what we expect in the proposal, already when you draft the proposal and you submit it for evaluation, that you pay attention to non-dependence. In particular, we expect you to describe, to have a dedicated paragraph text already in the proposal describing the technology or the technology process that you want to use for the development of your final product. And then you have to show that it will be free of any non-EU legal export restriction or limitation. For example, the ITAR or ER type of export, non-EU export restrictions. And then the additional element is to already think upfront, therefore set up the consortium and the way you will operate for the development of your product in a way that, let's say, is set up in a suitable way, and also, if relevant, let's say, therefore relevant, what I mean is the product might be captured by non-EU export restriction, describe how, let's say, the development process will manage to, let's say, not be captured by non-EU export restrictions. This is possible. You need to think about upfront and set up, let's say, a suitable consortium and process development that will allow you to do that. Please also note that starting from 2023, also for this topic, we are going to apply and implement the ownership control assessment procedure in order to, let's say, make sure that eventually, let's say, also multinational companies, therefore companies that are not only located in Europe, but they might have headquarters located outside Europe, will be, let's say, in a position to respond fully to the request of our topic. Therefore, considerations in terms of control, access to IPs, and so on and so forth. But a dedicated presentation will come later. The last point I would like to touch here is the legal obligation. Please note that for this topic, you need to agree with the legal obligation to provide access to the use of the products or the processes that will be achieved by the end of the project to all, let's say, and European entities and users that might be needed for a period up to 4 years after the end of the project in an unrestricted manner, therefore without triggering non-EU export restrictions such as ITAR or EAR, depending on the situation. So this was all from my side. Back to you, Christos.
Thank you, Fabio, and thank you, Mats. I think we have time maybe for one only question before in a couple of minutes we switch to the next block of topics. Let us see if there is perhaps one question we can take. Indeed, this is done via Slido, so you can either scan the code or go to the website and enter the event code. And clearly here, it's good that you also identify which topic you may be addressing, because they are, of course, a little bit different. Does not seem to be the case. Again, to remind that, of course, applicants, potential applicants can also introduce their questions on the via the research inquiry service, and also please keep visiting the funding and tenders portal website with the topic description, where also we may post call updates. You will find also the supporting document that Fabio was referring to, but also the eventually frequently asked questions. So no questions, and therefore I will pass the floor in a few seconds to Massimo, who will moderate the next block. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Christos. Indeed, so next block is about the call Horizon EUSPA 2023 Space 01, which is a call that will open probably in October, so nearly 1 year from now. But indeed, we thought it would be interesting for you to listen to some explanation about the content of this call, so that you will have plenty of time then to prepare good proposals. It is my pleasure now to invite Wojciech Fort from the EU Agency for the Space Program, EUSPA, who will present indeed these 5 topics under the EUSPA call. Wojciech, please.
Thank you very much, Massimo. I hope that you can hear me well. So as mentioned, I was asked to present to you 5 topics within the EUSPA call that will be opened in October 2023, and the deadline will be in February 2024. As you can see, there are 5 topics, where the first 2 are focusing more on the side of European GNSS. Specifically, all the topics are actually looking on the usage of the components of the space program in downstream. So the first 2 topics are on EGNSS. The first one will be dealing with transition towards green, smart, and more secure post-pandemic society. The second one is about closing the gaps in mature, regulated, and long lead market segments. And the third topic, focusing on Copernicus, is about space-based applications for businesses and policymaking. Then there is one topic for all the for both space components, Galileo and Copernicus, with focus on downstream applications with international partners. And the last topic will be dealing with GovSatcom. Next slide, please. So let's go into the details of each topic now.
Yes.
On this slide, you can see the first topic, which is EGNSS, transition towards a green, smart, and more secure post-pandemic society. The indicative budget here is 3.5 million euro. The foreseen contribution of EU per one project is between 1.5 and 2.5 million euro. It is innovation action, and the foreseen TRL at the end of the project is foreseen between 7 and 9. The expected outcomes of this topic are to stimulate the development, validation, and use of efficient and resilient commercial downstream solutions, with synergies between the different EU space program components. Then to foster the development and validation of space technologies that improve the quality of life in Europe. And thirdly, to create new space-based commercial opportunities by exploiting digitization and adaptation of business processes in the post-pandemic environment, as the name of the topic suggests. Next slide, please. So speaking more specifically, the proposals in this topic should, of course, leverage the services of European GNSS, including their differentiators. And the focus should be on commercial exploitation in one of the areas. The first area is to improve the quality of life in cities by addressing efficient mobility, energy efficiency, the environmental friendliness, but also the digital transition of the construction industry. Also, what is included here in this area is the solutions for personal assistance, healthcare, support to elderly, and also the city dashboards. The second area is addressing the challenge of higher reliance of existing infrastructure. This, of course, is taking into account the increased use of remote resources, as now we're speaking over WebEx, for example, which are naturally associated with cyber threats. Here in this area, proposals may cover applications for insurance or timestamping of transactions in finance area. But also the risk assessment, including the solution for the certifications on the GNSS-based timing equipment. When it comes to the ideas from energy sector, these are also welcomed, and they should emphasize the increasing share of electricity from renewables. The last area, or let's say the synergies which are foreseen in this topic, are of course foreseen for EUGNOS, Copernicus, but also GovSatcom services. Next slide, please. So that was the first topic. And the second topic that I would like to present to you is eGNSS, closing the gaps in mature, regulated and long-led markets. The indicative budget for this topic is 8 million euro. The EU contribution per one project is foreseen between 1.5 and 2.5 million euro. It is innovation action, and the technological readiness level is foreseen 7 to 9 at the end of the project. So as the name suggests, the outcomes that we expect from this topic is to broaden the reach of eGNSS by supporting the adoption of eGNSS in long-term markets which are typically regulated. This includes market segments such as rail, maritime, road, and aviation. I will go more into details later. And within these market segments, the focus is to develop the industry accepted certification and standardization schemes that exploit the use of eGNSS and of course its differentiators for operational services. Next slide, please. So let's take a look on those market segments that are mentioned, and they're mentioned in the work program. And the first area is the rail safety critical applications that would support the network efficiency and cost reduction, and also focusing on the European rail traffic management technical specifications to support the European GNSS. Also, the synergy with Copernicus and GovSatcom or other sensors for infrastructure monitoring are possible. The second area is the harbor and maritime. Here, the eGNSS supported operations are foreseen for inland waterways, fisheries, addressing the potential standardization and certification bottlenecks and assisting diverse pools of stakeholders. Also for the road and automotive market, proposals should address the certification bottlenecks for the use of eGNSS in safety-related applications, in insurance, telematics, and fleet management systems. Work program also mentions that areas requiring further consolidations are the Gallo emergency warning systems, Gallo high accuracy service in the deployment of 5G high accuracy networks. Next slide, please. The last market segment that is foreseen here in this topic is aviation, where the focus again is on the consolidation of standardization and certification for the efficient and green operations supported by Galileo and EGNOS. This is including the 4D trajectory operations, the EGNSS timing for system-wide information management, integration of dual frequency multi-constellation SBAS in avionics and aircraft. Also is possible integration with the Copernicus data into the current aviation system, and supporting the airport operation with the Gallo ARAIM. Inside aviation, we foresee also the applications for drones urban air mobility, such as urban air deliveries through European GNSS data and services for the navigation operations supported by Earth observation data for provision of meteorological data, obstacle information, and so on. So this topic is mainly focusing on EGNSS, but as I mentioned more times inside the market segments, here the proposals are welcome to explore the synergy with Copernicus, but also GovSatcom. Next slide, please. So that was for the topic of Copernicus-based applications for businesses. Sorry, that was the topic for the market-regulated systems, and now we will speak about the Copernicus-based applications for businesses and policymaking. Here, the indicative budget is €7 million. The EU contribution per project is foreseen between €1 and €2 million. It is research and innovation action, and the TRL foreseen is 2. The expected outcome here in this topic is to enhance the existing applications or develop new application and products relying on Copernicus data, making impact on users, businesses, or answering the needs from the public authorities. The increase of the integration and uptake of Copernicus data, services, and application in data economy is also foreseen, in particular the European data economy. Next slide, please. So here the work program is mentioning a number of Copernicus services where proposals which can be addressed by the proposals. Proposals should address only one area, which should be clearly indicated. And the services are the emergency service. So here the applications can submit ideas for downstream applications for better preparedness to extreme events, geohazards, prediction insurances, resilience to climate change, the local emergency management, and also the short-term recovery in case of disasters. The downstream applications using the Copernicus security service, exploiting the combination of Sentinels with national missions or new space services to support the resilience to major pan-European crises like pandemics. The application using the marine service is another area with special focus on biodiversity conservation, maritime spatial planning, coastal to shore services, new sources of pollution from land, and blue carbon farming. The next service is the climate change service, where the applications can use the, target the areas such as the forecast and preparedness to counteract the extreme climate events, and the Sentinel data integration in decision support systems. In land service, the applications should target better land use and natural resources planning, as well as the citizen awareness and reporting of environmental and biodiversity protection issues. And the last area is the atmosphere monitoring service, where the application should tailor, refine, and combine the products for serving users, particularly in the areas of air quality, health, biodiversity, but also wildfires monitoring, and in the section of greenhouse gases. Next slide, please. So the next topic that I would like to speak about today is designing space-based downstream applications with international partners. The indicative budget for this topic is 6 million euro. The contribution of EU per project is foreseen between 0.8 to 1 million euro. It is research and innovation action, with TRL from 3 to 4 at the end of the project. Here, is foreseen the usage of EGNSS or Copernicus, but also it's possible to combine both EGNSS and Copernicus to develop new and downstream applications. What I would like to highlight in the case of this topic is that the legal entities established in countries that have signed administrative cooperation agreement on Copernicus data access and Earth observation data exchange are exceptionally eligible for union funding. So here you can see on the slides which countries were signed at the end of when we were approving the work program. This can of course change. New countries can sign meanwhile. However, I believe that this is a very interesting opportunity to build new partnerships with organizations beyond the European Union and associated countries. Next slide, please. So inside these topics, the application should focus on the technical developments of the EU space-based solutions, but also dissemination and awareness raising, and also to provide the opportunities of creation of businesses-oriented partnerships between the European industry and the international partners in order to demonstrate the advantages of the differentiators that we have in Galileo and Copernicus, and also EGNOS, of course. It is important in this topic to exploit the value-added integration of Earth observation data with position data and also the ICT from international partner countries. The proposals dealing with European GNSS are encouraged to involve the relevant organizations on the European side, such as EASA or ESSP. And when dealing with Copernicus-based applications, participation of at least one partner from country that has signed the cooperation Copernicus agreement is required. And of course, in case of Copernicus, proposals are encouraged to use the Copernicus DIAS and integrate the third-party data. So that was the topic focusing on the international partners. Next slide, please. And the last topic that I would like to mention today is the EU GovSatcom for safer and more secure EU. The indicative budget for this topic is 10 million euros with contribution per project between 3 and 4 million euros. The type of action is innovation action. The TRL is 7 to 9. Here, the eligibility is also limited as in the other topics, and it is innovation action. However, at least one public entity must participate as the member of the consortium. This is because the public entities are the main users of GovSatcom. And I would say that in this topic, there are two main areas, so let's say two main components inside. One is the consolidation of services, the validation of services with the tools for the development of those services on the user level. And the second one is the outreach via the demonstration of selected use cases. Already building on the developed technology with end users. And here the user engagement plan should be included as well. Next slide, please. Here in this topic, the work program mentions the number of use cases. So there are 3 use cases mentioned. Let's say I would say the areas. The areas of the use cases are surveillance, crisis management, and key infrastructure. The proposal should select at least one GovSatcom use case. And the proposals focusing on following areas are especially encouraged in this topic. The first one is the disaster response or emergency services. The second one is the rail traffic management to improve the limitations linked to the geographical barriers. And the third one is telemedicine for humanitarian aid. The projects should improve one or more operational terminals to demonstrate the access of respective users to an early GovSatcom service, showcasing the benefits and fostering the users' uptake. And the equipment should support demonstration activities of the early developed services. So we foresee that here the projects will be running in 2024. So this is all from my side. This was the last topic. Of course, here it's more summary, but I welcome you to read the work program where you will see the full details of each topic. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Wojciech, for this very comprehensive introduction to the call, EUSPA call, which will open, as we said, in October and close in February 24. We have now some time for questions. As usual, you have the QR code that you can scan there, or you can use the event code to go on Slido and ask all your questions. So please go ahead. We'll take a few minutes to wait for questions to come in. nothing coming in so far. Let's wait a little longer. Okay, that does not seem to be questions, so we can wait a little longer. Just to remind you that now at say next session is at 12:30, and it will be about a number of horizontal issues that are let's say relevant for several topics. In particular, that would be about ownership and control, which was mentioned earlier today for some of the topics, about the security scrutiny, which is another important part of this of the evaluation process. And then to close this morning session, we will have a presentation from the European Innovation Council about funding opportunities for SME and startup. Now, it doesn't seem to, we don't seem to have any questions on the EUSPA call. If you have them, feel free to indeed to send also, ask them, and we will reply also offline. Now, if there are no more questions, I would just take another break until 12:30, when we will resume with this last session on horizontal issues. Thank you, everyone, and we see you in a few minutes.